This is the Team Objection podcast for July 26, 2018, episode 352, and we're finally getting A, the whole crew together, and B, the chance to do the thing that we've been talking about doing, one of the most influential sequels in Team Objection podcast history, I guess. We're going to review Incredibles 2.
Trying to think of one that was this influential.
I think we hoped Anchorman 2 would be good, and then it was,
It was fine.
I still haven't seen it.
Okay, so here's the deal with that. Go into it not expecting a thing. And then
Yeah,
you're pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
If you go into it expecting perfection, you're going to be really disappointed.
that's true. That's how I go through life, Dave. Just expect nothing.
Expect the bottom floor, and then when you get something good, hey, it wasn't total horseshit.
And then you have
Okay.
me, who against all odds actually thought it was more funny than the first one. So
Really?
yeah,
You just-
consistently
you really-
I thought it was funnier. I
You
just
really
don't find
the
like
contrarian view.
Great Odin's beard is like, okay, like to me that's not super. The one-liners aren't funny. I like situations that are really funny, and so the second one to me had a lot more of those situations.
I think there probably is more humor in the second one. I kind of agree. Unfortunately, it's probably worse in almost every other way.
But it's a comedy.
I mean, I guess, but those things still count. Maybe not as much as the humor, but when the plot's an incoherent mess.
And the fight
it certainly is.
fight scene went on way too long. Like, it was just too much. Like, they tried to recreate the fight scene, and it was just no.
And the cameos were neat. If
Yeah.
that scene had been about 3 minutes shorter, if they'd fit them all in still, I think it would have been fine.
See, and that's a common thing. Is you're either this is the thing with like Robot Chicken, not Robot Chicken, Family
Guy.
But
Yeah.
the chicken part of Family Guy, those fights,
Yeah.
you're either on board for all 20 minutes of that fight, or you're like, this is dumb. It's going on way too long.
Yeah.
I happen to think they're pretty. I'm amused by how long they go on for, but
The
I think
first
I'm in the
time-
minority on that one.
The first time it was funny because it was unexpected. Then it was like, okay, all right, we've seen it. This is beating a dead horse.
What's the other one that was super divisive? It's like the guy they throw clips to, Conway Twitty.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's another one of those where if you think that's funny, you're like, haha, and otherwise it's a 3-minute song, and you're like, what?
And I actually did not find that one funny.
Yeah.
Hopefully you've got a DVR and just fast forward. Okay, cool, we're past it.
To me, that was the same thing that people say of like you're just doing something completely random, has no bearing at all on the plot of the episode. It's a joke that has no context. That's what I
At
find.
least the
for
chicken fight scenes have choreography and animation to them. They're not
Well,
just ripping off another music video.
The writers take a break. Animators take a break.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Everybody have the day off. Go outside, enjoy the weather, and we'll see you next week.
So I thought
Yep,
Incredibles
exactly.
2 was interesting because it's also one of those sequels where they waited like 15 years between the two, which has been happening like a lot recently.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times it has not been super successful to wait this long on different movies that we've seen. I'm trying to think of another example, and I can't. Indiana Jones is obviously, that's an obvious one.
Zoolander's another.
Zoolander,
yeah.
which I thought was still funny, but like,
I
it
haven't
was
seen
not
it.
great,
I
Michelle.
love the first one so much. I was just like, I don't really care about the
What else?
the
Dumb
sequel.
and Dumber.
Dumb and Dumber. That's
Oh
the one I was thinking
God.
of.
Should
Yeah.
not have
The
been tried.
newest one. Yeah.
No.
So, I mean, there's definitely some examples, more often than not, where it does not work out very well. At the very least, it makes you question why it was made. And for all the ups and downs of Incredibles 2, I don't think there's any question that it was worth doing. I don't think any of the four of us are going to say, like, nope, shouldn't have done it. It was bad.
This is
So
not bad.
Was there a reason it took this long that we know of? I haven't really heard why. It just kind of didn't happen,
I
right?
don't think they really intended to have a sequel for it. Like, they had it open-ended, right, with, like, the Underminer at the very end. But I think it was more of just, like, an implication that they would continue on with, you know, their crime fighting or whatever. But I don't think, was it Brad Bird, the guy who did it? I don't think there was ever really any intention to do a sequel. And those people were like, we need a sequel. And then, by then, they'd had so many movies already down the pipeline. And so I think it just got bumped. You know?
Yeah, the most that I've heard was Brad Bird said, I didn't want to do a sequel unless I had a story that I really cared about.
I saw the same thing, yeah.
And
Okay.
plus, it seemed to fall into like a changing philosophy or culture in Pixar because only recently have they done, other than Toy Story movies, they haven't really done any sequels. And then you had Finding Dory and Cars, and so I think that might have something to do with it too. But
That's a good point. Yeah, you're right about that. But yeah, I thought it was good. It's kind of interesting because I remember when Brad said the thing about not writing a sequel unless he really felt like it was a good story. And like, I don't quite see that in this sequel. Like, I don't feel like it was a story that really needed to be told because it kind of had already been told in the first one, but a little bit better, just kind of like flipped. But I still liked it. I agree with you, Chris. It was a good movie. I'm glad that it exists, but I don't know if that it's really quite at the level of like importance and like thematic quality that the first one was.
I think the gap hurt it because
Yeah.
in a sequel, if there's no time in between them or a standard amount of time, you have the first movie really focuses on a handful of the characters. Second movie, for the most part, did a good job of focusing on like the other characters, right? Like Violet got a little more attention. Obviously,
Jack
the mom got more attention.
Elastigirl, yeah.
Jack got too much attention.
Correct.
It was good. It was funny, but it was like this is way too much. And I think that's okay. You want to give everybody their fair share. But when you wait so long, I'm like, I can't wait to see more of Mr. Incredible and like the whole crew. But like Dash, was he in the movie actually? Because I can't recall. And I like him.
He did math homework. That's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what you want from your Dash.
And the dad was in it, and he had his own art. It was interesting, like just second fiddle, which again is fine because Elastigirl was second fiddle the first time, but with this much of a gap, it's like I miss those characters, and you didn't really get to see a lot of them in this one either, and that bothered me.
Yeah.
I do like when sequels though pick up right where the last one left off, because I hate trying to fill in that gap of what happened in between the end of the first one and the beginning of the second one. This one was like, how much time elapsed between the two?
None.
Seconds, like literally none. And I actually really like that because it seemed like at the end of the first Incredibles, hey, everyone likes the supers again. They're all going to be made legal. Everything's fine. But no, there was still a story to tell because no law changed just because they stopped this one thing. In fact, their problem still continued because they destroyed a bunch of property the entire time. So I like how they continued that storyline a bit with a different twist on it.
I would be interested to see what the viewing experience was like for people who either had not seen the first one and watched it right before 2 came in theaters so that they had an idea and they were going right into it, or for people who will watch both through Redbox or streaming services or whatever. People who are going to watch these consecutively. So there is no drop-off, and not only in the movie, but in real life, there's not this gap that has this problem that none of us can escape because we saw this all years ago. So none of us can speak to that experience, and I think Shaun's right. The gap hurt it in that respect. I wonder what people think about 2 if there is no gap.
I'd probably like it more. That's my thought.
Yeah. Although, you know what's surprising? Speaking of time, I didn't realize that this was set in like the 60s or 70s type of time frame. The first one I didn't realize was. After watching the second one, I realized that it wasn't like they had all these superpowers in the 60s and were famous, and then it was like the 90s type of thing. It was set back in like the 60s, which I was intrigued by.
Wait, what?
So the movies were set in like the 60s, basically. Yeah.
Wow.
Nobody has cell phones. They're all old style cars that are out there. They have like advanced technology because that's what the super villains have. But yeah, it's totally set in like the late 60s, I think.
Are you sure about that, Dave? I'm going to look that up. You might be right. I noticed the cars for sure. It's like, and you don't know, is that an aesthetic that, because you'll get that sometimes where, I don't want to say steampunk, but like the old meets the new, even though it's present time, they've adopted some of the aesthetics of the past. But I don't know if that's because it's just the 60s.
1962.
There you go. So when they flash back in the first one, is that like the 40s or 50s?
Yeah,
early 50s.
Around 1947, supposedly.
Wow.
He's written.
I didn't know that.
There's a
That's
newspaper
interesting.
in the first movie that is, what does this say? May 16th, 1962.
Yep.
And he's reading
I
it.
never realized it.
I wish they would do more. I really like period pieces, and I know it's an animated film or whatever, but they could do so much with it because it's animated, and I wish there was more, like 60s-isms, and you're right, the aesthetic is there, but the characters feel very, very modern. In no way are these characters from the 60s, and so that was kind of a jarring thing. I didn't know. Like, you told me this is the first time I'd ever heard that, and I was like, wait, what? And it all makes sense, but yeah, that's
it's
weird.
like the 60s, except for like the yacht and the house that like transforms and I know it's technology and stuff, but it could have been more clear. That's really interesting.
So, Shaun, you touched on it a little bit earlier with the change in focus. Did you guys like Bob Parr being dad? Because there's a couple funny scenes I think in that, but I thought they played on a few tropes in the beginning at least, where he like, oh, I've got this, no problem, and then he's completely overwhelmed. I don't know. That seems to be a pretty common theme when you try to represent a dad taking care of kids.
It's kind of a tired trope to me. It kind of bothers me. It's just like, oh, the dad like never knows how to take care of the children. And it's like, that's bullshit. And like, you should really expect, 100% from each parent. Truly, you should. And so this whole like, what do? I'm flabbergasted is kind of obnoxious. However, knowing now that it was in the 60s, it actually makes a lot more sense.
Uh-huh.
And I actually like it a little bit more. But the trope itself annoys me. However, they didn't linger on it.
No.
And I thought that was good. Like, it got like 15, 20 minutes into the whole, what do I do? And I was like, oh God, like, here we go. And they cut that off like pretty quick. And he starts to realize, how to be a good and efficient dad. And I thought that was actually pretty decent.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is my favorite animated film ever. I put that on the line. I made that clear.
Wow.
My co-workers here disagree. They're wrong. But one of the reasons I like the first one is I thought they balanced the two parents really well. There was a little bit, I would argue just slightly too much, although they address it, where the doting wife is like, oh, my husband is out there. He's probably having an affair and I'm helpless. And she gets knocked some sense into. And then she's a part of the adventure. She has the best stuff in the first movie. When she's infiltrating the place with the kids and falling out of the airplane. That's all great. You did not really get a whole lot of the flip of that in this one. You had Elastigirl carrying the weight, which is cool.
Yep.
Mr. Incredible comes in, gets brainwashed
immediately,
and then doesn't really play a very big. I think he helps to steer change the course of the boat.
He protects the city from the boat. Yeah, that's about the only thing he does successfully as far as superpowers in the whole movie. Because he doesn't do much in the intro either. He has very little to say about what Underminer's doing, and it's kind of played up for comedy, which is fine. But then when you get to the end, and Mr. Incredible really hasn't done a whole lot, you go, oh.
Well, and it's a plot point. The reason they like Elastigirl is because she causes the least amount of damage. Mm-hmm. They even say if it was just you, it wouldn't have happened. But because of your husband, unfortunately, like his powers and who he is, there's a whole bunch of damage. And so he kind of is useless,
Well, the problem is, so that it's not that he causes damage, he's a loose cannon, that's the whole plot point, and that's fine, I kind of like that aspect of it. But in the past, it's happened when he was successful. Yeah. In this movie, things are just getting damaged and broken all over the place, and he's barely doing anything right at all. He looks like almost bumbling in some scenes.
Yeah, he does.
Although, I did like how they had to kind of explore his feelings to that, because he was the important guy. He was always the one that everyone looked up to. Now he's doing the exact same thing and not getting the recognition for it. That would be an extremely hard thing to go through, and you can see that pain on his face while he's trying to also be happy for his wife at the same time. I kind of like that.
I think they explored that really well, but they didn't bring it home. I think you're right, and I think that was really intriguing from most of the movie. And then in the end, because there is no hey, I'm doing it right, he continues to be bumbling. They lost it a little for me, they didn't drive it home when they had the opportunity. And the same with Dash, and I'm hung up on this thing, and I don't know if it's because he had a huge portion in the first movie. He had a whole big set piece dedicated to him, and maybe the creators felt like, well, there's only so many ways you can interestingly show Speed. But he didn't do barely anything either.
He's even worse. What does he do? Quick, think about it.
He runs through the portals.
Yep.
That one part.
He takes care of Jack at one point, and then Jack gets away anyway. So it's just like, why are you here?
He's not fast enough to catch Jack when he's going in the elevator. So that's his thing, is speed. And he's not up to snuff there.
Why didn't he have any kind of... It was like the math homework thing. It's boring. No one cares about that. Why didn't he have something? Violet had the boyfriend thing, and that also was really tired, and I really wish that had been something else, to be honest. But wouldn't it have been cool if he wanted to be on the track team, but he can't because he's too fast, and I don't know, something cute like that. I don't know.
I honestly think how much can you do with speed? That's kind of what, like you
Just
said.
make him
kind
a
of agree.
character that you care about. I didn't care about Dash, and I came into it like really. I think I'm in the same boat as Shaun. I was really expecting something from his character. I thought that they had something good, and no, he was just there. He just existed.
Here's the problem to me. What does he overcome in the first movie?
Well, the whole arc for him is like he wants to be able to use his powers.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's kind of everybody. But
Essentially.
It's
sort of tied to
mostly
the
him,
bigger
though.
one.
he wants to use his powers. He wants to play sports. He's
And
not
he
allowed.
can't. And so he has his moments where he gets to shine, and he finally gets to display all of his powers, and he has those cool scenes. But Violet already has to overcome more than that in the first movie, and then she has more time given to her in the second one about overcoming this new thing. Whether or not it should have been there, like Michelle said, who knows? He's not overcoming anything in the second movie other than
He's
math,
bad at math.
like you said.
Math
which,
homework, yeah.
And I mean, we get to throw a quick jab at Common Core in there, which is great because Common Core blows. But like, for as far as Jack is concerned, or not Jack, Dash is concerned, what's the point?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and then they spent a lot of time on Jack, and I think that's just something I get what they're trying to go with. It's like, hey, let's have this baby do things. And the raccoon fight was funny, I think.
Yeah.
But there's just too many things that he's powerful for. It's almost like if you had a movie about this kid growing up, he'd be just unstoppable pretty much. So, I don't know. I didn't find it that enjoyable.
I actually like it that he's like overpowered. I would be curious to see what happens to his character, but he didn't deserve all of that screen time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not at all.
I thought he was interesting. I think characters that have powers like that, like Rogue and whatever, I think those are really interesting. He had, I don't know if it's merchandising or something for the kids or
it had to have been.
but it was so much of the movie. It was so much.
And you know what? I liked the raccoon fight.
So did
The
I.
first time.
I did too.
The first time. To me, raccoons are not stupid. When a baby starts shooting lasers and multiplying itself and phasing through walls, and you've taken 3 L's already, maybe it's time for the raccoon to pack up and leave and not extend the scene for 3 more minutes that were completely unnecessary.
In a tightly packed movie.
Yeah, there's not a lot of other wasted time in that. I mean, you could argue about certain characters and the amount of time they get, but like scene to scene wise, you really don't spend a lot of time lingering anywhere except that raccoon fight.
Mm-hmm.
So the villain was lame. I don't.
How quickly did you guess who the villain was?
And I don't spend a lot of time trying to do that in movies.
Me either.
I don't. But it was so obvious. I'm like, oh, so you're the villain, and
We talked about this off air last week, but I had him in second one.
oh, I mean,
I think I told you coming on the movie too because of the name, which was
Yeah.
clever. But I'm like, why are you sacrificing any chance at a reveal for this name?
Well, yeah, we talked about it too. To have Bob Odenkirk as the possible villain was too obvious. I knew he wasn't. It's too obvious typecasting. I knew he wouldn't be
she's
bad.
like, I'm the genius behind the genius or something. I was like, oh, but that's actually because the villain and
Because the heroes in this movie are female, so guess what? The villain probably is too. What do you know? Gee.
I didn't dislike that. I just wish they would have had. They just wouldn't have made her so sinister so instantly. Like you could just tell that she had ulterior motive the entire time.
Yeah.
the second she was like, there was no reason my dad should have died, and that you're like, well, there's your motive too. There it is.
And if they had been in the first movie as just like side characters or even just barely introduced but sort of mentioned, it would have been one thing. But here it's like, here's these new characters. We have no villain. Underminer's gone unless he's coming back. That's the only other potential thing here. So who's the bad guy? There's going to be a bad guy.
Right.
Who's
Yeah.
the bad guy?
Yep.
One of these two.
Yeah.
Which one? I guess we'll find out.
I did like Bob Odenkirk's character a lot.
He was
He
so
was actually
earnest.
my favorite character. I was
Yeah.
like,
He's
that's
always
weird.
so good. He's
Yeah.
always good.
He's just like the right kind of skeezy, but he's like good-hearted in this one. It was actually enjoyable to see an animated version of him just
Yeah.
walking around doing his thing. I liked him a lot.
Elastigirl, I have some problems. And the thing is, you can't be like, I thought she was too much in it, because then you're like, you're a chauvinist. It's not what I mean. I'm just saying, was there any time for anybody? She got like 15 action scenes in that movie.
It was a lot. And the action scenes were beautifully
They
done,
were
I
cool.
will say.
I love the motorcycle. That was
Oh,
genius.
it was.
She got to do cool new things.
What?
She did get to do cool. And that's like, I feel like that's all they care about. Can we show a cool new power, something that's never been done before? If we can't, we don't want to do it.
Except the parachute.
And I
We're
don't-
going to do that 16
well,
times.
Yeah.
It's useful.
It's
the
good.
Portal Girl, I
Portal
found
Girl's great.
Void!
She was so cool. She was my favorite.
I love her. I
I'm in the
want
minority
a
for
story
sure.
with just Void
Yeah.
and Violet. That's all I want.
found her so
That's all I
annoying, but her power was visually incredible, and so I loved that, and I loved all the different things they did with it. It was like Portal in the Incredibles universe. It was really cool. I thought she was annoying, but okay.
No!
I'll say I'm in the wrong. I mean, clearly you all
She's
liked
Kristen
her, so
Stewart. I mean, she's not voiced by her, but she literally was her. I was what is this? That's bizarre.
The problem, of course,
I liked
is
her.
her powers are great. I didn't hate her character as much as Shaun did. She got more than Dash.
Yeah,
I think that was
that
my
shouldn't
issue.
happen.
Yeah.
She has better powers than Dash, though. That's part of it.
I agree, but if you're gonna take speed to some logical extensions like they've done with Flash and some other stuff, I don't know if I want like time travel stuff, but there were other things they could have done still. They didn't.
Oh,
I mean,
totally.
yeah, there's the whole infamous water running scene in the first movie, and that's like maybe one of the standout moments. There's other stuff they could have done.
There's a ton of stuff with speed that you can
There's
do.
a lot of stuff with speed.
Phasing you could do. They didn't do that.
Yep.
Like your molecules are moving so fast you can pass through solid matter. Conservation of momentum, energy. So like your punches are really. They could do so much with him, and they were like, "No, you're done. You had a big segment in the first. You're done.
Do your math.
You're not going to get anything."
Ah.
It bothered me a whole lot.
We've gone back to it
Yeah.
because
And
it bugged us.
This had so much potential, and I like this movie, but all I'm doing is griping. I love scenarios where like all the characters are like zombified or brainwashed or otherwise like incapacitated, and then it's up to like the select few remaining to like save the day. And it just felt like a little bit wasted potential. Like it was a cool setup, but then the car came in, which is complete like Deus Ex Machina, and I was disappointed about that. And then it was just kind of like, it was not satisfying to me the way that they resolved all of that.
What did you think of the villain's motivation, though? Like, hey, you have to rely on yourself, so I'm going to make sure everyone relies on themselves instead of screens and stuff like that.
It was a reach. It was like reaching so far, I pulled a nerve. Like it's just like it seems silly and arbitrary. I'm like, this is the kind of motivation you would like get out of like a 12-year-old trying to write this story. It felt very immature. Like I didn't buy it, is what I guess I'm trying to say. It could have been something a lot, I don't know, better.
Yeah. To me, the biggest issue is that it's the largest anachronism in the movie when you do realize that it's set in the 60s. If they're trying to portray a 2018 message about people's slavish devotions to their electronic devices, it doesn't really work when you have the movie set in the 60s and technology hasn't proliferated like that, except in the hands of supervillains. I mean, there's TVs and stuff, but it's not nearly the same.
Yeah, I mean, you could make the argument that people have said that since the proliferation of screens, since TVs, like, grandparents were saying how our grandparents' parents are probably saying how the TV is going to ruin your eyes. It's going to ruin it. Sit in front of that box all day, and now we've got all of our own devices that we can ruin our eyes for. So it's the same message no matter what the time, though. There
was a portion though where they were so like the villain. Her big issue was like we relied on superheroes so much, and we shouldn't have, and then we paid the price, right? Like, and I just thought I think you're right, Michelle. I think in theory that was a good idea, but then her plot was like, it relied on the superheroes actually being really successful. But then her coming in and like ruining all of that, and it's like
was weird.
It's like against your own message, kind of like.
It was really convoluted.
Yeah.
And like it kind of reminded me, and maybe this is where they were going with it. It kind of reminded me of like a Bond villain. It's just like, what?
It felt like she was trying to build everybody's hope in them up to only have it be crushed, so it would be extra damning.
I mean, yeah, but then it's like, but it relied on these heroes who can't be relied on being actually pretty damn reliable for like the whole film, and then her going in and ruining that, and you're like, but you're defeating your own argument. Like, this is dumb.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It just didn't make any sense to me. I don't know.
You can rely on them until you can't, basically, is what I think she was trying to say. But I agree.
Yeah, I get that. I thought there was a better way to go about it, even for her.
Yeah.
And the whole thing on a base level kind of bugs me too. Like, my father was killed because no one answered the phone.
Yeah.
So that's it then. That's why we're doing global domination now, because of a phone fiasco. Okay.
I mean, ability. She's got pretty cool ability. I mean, that. So take advantage of it, I guess.
I
That was just the
suppose.
one thing she needed to push her over the edge.
There's also this other lingering issue where there's really no reason why she should have lost at all. And we have not really addressed why she did, other than the fact that the teens and the baby managed to get into a talking self-automated car, and somehow all that worked out in a wonderful confluence of events to stop a person who had stopped every other superhero she encountered to that point. All of them. Even Elastigirl, who was the best. Now, granted, she was the first, and maybe that's why, because you get her out of the way. But, like, what was stopping her? She wanted to use these superheroes to convey a message. Well, just have Mr. Incredible go punch the shit out of the city, and I think you're in good shape. That's a good message.
Yeah, the whole thing with the yacht, and they're all on there, and then it's going towards us. Why?
Sign this treaty. Oh, boy,
Stupid.
treaties. That's what we like. It's just like Star Wars. We want to see congresses and treaties and bureaucrats. That's what we want in our superhero movies.
And I never want to see another action movie that ends on a boat. I find boats to be very boring. Is that? I'm thinking Speed 2. I'm thinking the end of Taken. It's like it's never good. And now Incredibles 2. You're on a yacht and it's boring. It's just water. So James Bond had an action scene and a boat chase, and I was like, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. I'll come back when it's over.
It's like,
But
stop
you
trying
can't
to make
escape.
Fetch happen.
Yeah.
But you can't escape. That's the whole point, right? You can't escape the boat. You're
Yeah, if you
confined.
do a zombie movie in a boat, that's cool. I don't want to see an action movie in the boat anymore. Do it in an airplane.
I don't know.
If it was a giant airplane, that would have been cooler.
I don't know. Fear
a
the Walking Dead
spaceship.
had zombies on a boat. It didn't work.
If you had a rocket, they were all in space, the International Space Station, that would have been cool too.
So
Then there's no escape.
there's two inevitable parts I think we have to talk about here. One of which is comparing to the first, which we'll get to last because it will be a part of the score, I imagine. But the other one to me is, what did the movie do well? Because it is something that we all enjoyed, and yet we've done nothing but talk shit about it for 25 minutes. So to me, what did you like about the movie? And one of the things to me is I think the humor was better than the first one. It's close. There are moments in both that I like. There was a few more, I think, in the second one that I think were funny to me.
I laughed. I mean, I gotta say, I agree with you. Like, I laughed harder in this movie at one particular scene, and it's probably dumb, but it was the scene where Mr. Incredible is trying to read to Jack and he's starting to fall asleep, and the baby just does a little tap tap on his cheek.
That was cute. I liked that,
love-
actually.
I don't know why I laughed so hard at it, but it made me like literally laugh out loud like for a couple seconds.
See, we're trying to be good though, and so I would say yes, I agree that it was funnier, but it came at the cost of like
Yeah.
drama, like the gravitas. Gravitas?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the right
pronounce
word.
that? I
But-
read it. I don't say it a lot. Yeah, like it wasn't as. I thought the first movie was like really poignant. Like I thought it was very well done, and you didn't get the same
balanced,
level.
I
Yeah,
think is probably a good word for it, because I do agree. I think I can't remember. It's been so long since I've actually seen the first one. I have not gone back to it in a few years. I remember the parts are very funny, but I thought that this one had a lot of really good humor for everyone, kind of a thing. It was good, but it didn't feel as balanced. And I, as an adult now, like I noticed that more. So.
I think the other thing they did well is the action scenes we talked about a little bit earlier.
Very
I mean,
good.
They had obviously they have better computer animation technology now, but they were really well done. Like it just felt so fluid.
Yeah.
It just looked clean
The
comparatively.
animation was stunning.
Yeah.
I had some of the best I've seen. It was beautiful.
and the dialogue continued to be strong. Like it was
Yep.
good. The relationship dynamic was good. I didn't explore the characters, some of them as much, but like it was still. You got some interesting stuff, like conversations between, I don't know, they're Mr. and Mrs. Incredible. She's not Mrs. Incredible. She's Elastigirl. She is not defined by her man.
Yes.
But, yeah, that was all
Bob and
good.
Helen. Bob and Helen.
Bob and
Bob and
Helen.
Helen Parr. Parr is the last name. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was good too. The relationship, and then like the weird subplot memory thing. I thought that was like with the boyfriend. He had his memories wiped, but like they bookended the movie. Like that was the prologue of the movie,
Yeah.
and I was like, that's strange. I'm sorry, Chris. I'm going on to what's bad again. I liked the continuing. What I liked about the first one is this unique take on heroes, like in the real world. Like, no, they're not just all love. People, get mad at them for saving them when they don't want to be saved, and all the collateral damage. And like they found a new way to kind of explore that in this one as well, and like using Helen because she has low collateral damage, and I thought that was very thoughtful and interesting.
I agree. I think that was something I was going to mention too. Was I think it's incredibly real, even though it's superheroes. Is like they're basically taking people who have these incredible powers and putting them in what the real world is. They're not putting them in Gotham City. And they're not putting them in Metropolis or something like that. They're putting them in a city that has to deal with everything that comes with these incredible powers that come with it. I feel like for the most part, the villains aren't Bond villains who are going to explain their whole plot and allow you to escape while they're explaining their plot. They're pretty ruthless for the most part, just in achieving their goals. So I like the realism, for lack of a better word.
Well, and in the first movie, he even talks about, you got me monologuing. So like they
You
address
slide.
that.
Yeah.
I will say that's one thing. I don't have a lot of complaints about the Avengers as a whole, but that's one thing where I think that The Incredibles has done it, has built a world where these things have these real-life impacts in an interesting way. They've tried to touch on this in a couple different films in the entire MCU, and I'm like, I don't think you're succeeding. And I respect they're doing it, because the biggest problem we talked about with some of the other stuff from DC was like they don't even bother to try and explain, oh, millions of people just died, whatever. But even so, like we see these scenes where they're like struggling over some things that have happened over a couple of different movies, and you're like, I just don't care, because we know there's bigger threats coming anyways, and you're going to have to deal with them whether the world likes it or not. Whereas here in The Incredibles, since the stakes are still lower, I really like the fact that it feels more grounded.
And they don't touch on this directly in Incredibles, but I like how, unlike a lot of superhero movies, they don't trivialize the military and the police like so directly. Like where was the military at any point in Avengers 4? You didn't think maybe Wakanda? Like, I mean, those are just warriors from the. You didn't think a tank or like 18 would help with all of that? We didn't want to even try.
Yeah, Wakanda's opened their borders for the first time, and they're starting to share the technology in the world, and the rest of the world's like, fuck them.
You have armored rhinos on the battlefield. You didn't think like a bomber or something? Like, I don't know. But The Incredibles, like you said, Dave, they really do a good job of saying this is like these people with powers, but in the real world, not this fake world where like the police don't exist. I thought that was cool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One other thing I liked quite a bit was, it wasn't something I expected to, but the scene where Helen is trying to sneak through what we think at the time is Screenslaver's lair.
Oh, yeah.
Something the first movie didn't have a ton of, in my opinion, was like tense moments, and I thought this one actually did a pretty good job, because there's the whole weird setup, and then screens are coming on and off at weird times, and then it eventually leads to a thing where you're like, oh, is this pizza boy delivery guy? Well, that probably can't be right, but at least, even on a small scale, for a moment, they made you think maybe your assumption was wrong about the villain. Maybe.
Oh, I like the attention to detail in that scene, too, how she had her eyes closed the whole time.
Yeah, right.
I thought it was just like, hey, oh, wow, she's fighting that. Wait, why isn't she getting hypnotized? Oh, her eyes are closed. Okay, good. I mean,
it was gritty. I mean, she got her ass kicked.
Yeah.
Yeah, she did.
And she dealt more than she took, but it was pretty like pretty brutal.
Now, sure, it also raises questions. I know we kept saying we wouldn't do the bad, but like, so somebody who's hypnotized, they are now a fighting master, because I'm assuming the pizza delivery guy was not going to be able to hold his own in a fight with Elastigirl otherwise.
I think she was controlling them still, right? But then, yeah, that calls into question what mechanism do you have for that 1-to-1, like...
Yeah, it seems like she was controlling them on a macro level, like do this thing, take this guy, go over here, but not on the micro level of, all right, block here with your arm, and now slide over here and pivot into this stance.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, when they had 10 people under their control, that like, how are you going to control all of them at once?
Yeah, when they're all chasing down the kids on the boat, for example. So I think, again, it sort of raises some questions, but I still liked the scene. I thought it was a nice, like, it was almost at the midway point, and I was like, this is kind of cool. This is different. This is new, and I'm a fan.
The angles that they had shot it from too, it felt almost horror movie-ish, because it was. So I liked all the angles that they kind of shot it from.
Would you say it felt like
that was just good.
Claustrophobic? Are you kind of saying, Dave, like it was very like tight shots and?
And then when there's a room with like hypno devices all over the walls and stuff, I'm sure some people started having strokes. So that's great.
They did.
Yeah.
There was a warning, and
Yeah, a lot of people were upset that there was no warning because of the flashing lights and stuff like that. But
get over it. If you can't watch Incredibles, that's natural selection.
Yes. Screenslaver was right all along. So the time has now come where we have to rank this, and sometimes we take a look at a series and we go like, okay, X placement. There's only 2 here, so the inevitable comparison is basically, where's the first one score? Because we never really scored it per se for the show, and what does this one get in comparison?
Do I have to score the first one? It's
You
a 10.
do because it's a
10.
10. Yeah. So we'll just move on.
Put it on the record. Now it's been defined by the generation and for the entire podcast for future people to look at.
Yeah.
They know for sure 10.
Easily.
It's so hard to compare the first one in a series when it introduces a new idea, because the first one has the novelty of the new idea. So you're always kind of comparing it to that. But I say that the first one, I would probably go more towards a 9 myself. I think that the idea is great. It's actually pretty dark, like how the supers start getting sued is because he saved a guy from killing himself. It's pretty dark. That some things that maybe a lot of people don't remember from 15 years ago or whatever it was, but still I'd give it about a 9.
Not to mention he murders like a bunch of superheroes.
Like straight up dead.
Yeah. And
like he finds the bones. Yeah. It's like sad.
And the Incredibles kill a lot of henchmen. A lot of them.
And yes, they do. And also the like very dark humor with the cape in the like it's funny, but like those people are dead.
Yeah.
And we're laughing.
That brings up another question. Did Edna design all of those costumes with capes, then realize her mistake to then say no capes, or was that somebody else that designed those?
She wouldn't have done that.
I don't know. Other designers. It was just a deadly lesson. I don't know.
I thought she had, but I don't know. Like, how else did she get her fame?
I mean, we know that there are other superhero outfit designers in the world now, so it's possible it's either way.
Which I also enjoyed. I kind of like the fashion element of it too. It's kind of cute.
Yeah, she was good in this. Just about the right amount of her.
When Jack was imitating her, I did laugh pretty hard at that one with the sucker.
If I were to have anything from Jack, it would be those scenes.
Yeah.
Because I thought that was actually really sweet, and it kind of had this cool character development for Edna, which I enjoyed.
The eye thing and the finger thing, and then like voice recognition, like ba ba ba.
Yeah, it's cute. That's so cute.
So I think for me, the original is like a 9.5. It's not a 10 for me, but it's close. It's up there, and this is more like an 8. And sequels are always on a tough road, right? Partly for the reason that Dave mentioned, where, I mean, how many sequels can you name that are better than the original? I don't know, Dark Knight, Empire Strikes Back, Toy Story 3 maybe, or 2 if you love that one. But, like, the examples are few and far between at the very least. Everybody can agree on that. So it was always going to be an uphill battle. It was not helped by the gap. I think they did the best they could given the gap. Like we said, there's so many bad examples of movies that have taken 10, 15, 20 years off and come back and made you almost regret them even existing again in the first place. This was good. And again, it's sort of like a couple other movies we reviewed recently. We talked mostly about flaws, but it's more like nitpicking when something else that we originally liked was so close to perfection. So it's like a solid 8. I would watch it again. I'd watch the first one again before I watch this one again, but such is life.
Well, I mean, and I think to be fair, the debate between the originals and sequels, the originals, they introduced the world, so they have that advantage. But if the sequel can take that world and spin it in a new, interesting direction and build off that first one, like they have everything they need to be better than the first one. It doesn't always work out that way, but Winter Soldier is also another one that's better than the first one for that reason. They take the world on the first one, and then they turn everything on its head. And
so is Infinity War, but that's really hard because, like, those are direct sequels in one sense, but they're also really not another.
Right.
But you're right. I mean, it does sort of count.
Aliens is another.
Aliens is a good one. Godfather.
I don't think Aliens is better. It's way different. I don't think it's really comparable.
It's
Terminator 2.
It's not a lot better, but it's better. Aliens and Alien. Oh, come on.
Alien's a horror film, and Aliens is an action film.
Yeah, I mean, I know that, but like it's still
not
better.
Even worth comparing. They're different genres.
Yeah, like you got to think of like the whole mom, like that whole like theme and that motif running through like parenthood. Like the first one didn't have almost anything of that. It was just horror.
Yeah,
we're gonna talk about. You know what? Let's shelf this for now. We're gonna talk about like sequels compared to the originals. We'll do that next week.
That's the same thing with Terminator 1 and 2, I think.
It is. And it's because it's the same guy who did it, James Cameron. Although he might have done. Did he do a Terminator 1 as well?
I don't think so, actually. I think he only did 2.
I feel like he came in after somebody else did the original, just like with Alien, and like he did it like this cool new thing with it.
James Cameron.
Okay.
But still.
Terminator 1.
Okay.
I looked it up.
Good job, tech guy.
Yeah, I was doing something for work, and as I heard the sentence, I'm like, I can do this real quick.
Anyway, we're going to get... I think this is ripe for discussion, so we're going to get in. I hope you bring your A game, Michelle, because I am going to.
Shaun, what'd you rate number 2 then?
Michelle hasn't gone yet.
Oh,
Oh
Michelle.
yeah, I haven't gone at all. I give
Hi.
the first one like between a 9 and 9.5, probably a 9.5. I really enjoy that movie, and I think it kind of hits all the points that it should. It's it's great. And so yeah, I think we've already touched on all of this. It's hard to compare sophomore slump. It's hard to like whatever blah blah blah. Despite that, it's average. It's a good 7.5.
All right.
I would say 8, because I would say that same thing of like average to me is like 7.5, and I would say this is a little above average. So
Yeah,
8.
that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would give it 8.5 because I did like a lot of the action scenes. I remember seeing it and thinking, oh, they did a really good job on this one. My first thought leaving the theater was like, wow, I really enjoyed this. And so, yeah, there was a lot of flaws in it that we touched on, but I just really enjoyed it leaving the theater. So I'd say 8.5.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think there's just something to be said for the fact that, yeah, we talked about in the very beginning, this didn't necessarily need to be made. It didn't break a ton of new ground. It wasn't really telling a story that needed to be told. But at the end of the day, I think all of us were probably just grateful to have more times to spend with the characters.
Yeah,
Like-
totally.
I just wanted more of it.
Yeah.
I'm
And
glad
Bob-
they made it.
Yeah,
And Bob Odenkirk. So I'm glad I got to spend time with
There
him.
you go.
that's
Yes.
true. He wasn't in the
Yeah.
first one. Look at him now. There he is.
Yep.
Alrighty. So that's our review of Incredibles 2 with the whole crew here. Wave goodbye to everybody. Ivan, wave goodbye.
That was better than any other review you've seen or read of Incredibles 2, and you know it's true.
Damn.
That's why it took so long, right?
Right. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
been 4 weeks. We've had a chance to read every other review, but here we are.
We had to get the experts together.
Yes. We needed the whole panel here. We couldn't do it without him. Everybody liked the first movie too much, so that's why
Right.
with past weeks we couldn't do it. We could have, but then we would have been down someone. Sean would have killed us if we'd done it without him.
I would have.
Would you?
He would have
Oh,
tried.
okay.
I'm already gonna kill Dave,
Would've tried.
but this would have been more fuel for that fire.
That's another episode, isn't it? Reasons you'd want to kill me. Like you
Yes.
could fill an episode with that.
Oh, yeah.
We'll do tail of the tape with you too and see like who would break down what and like who has the better right hand and et cetera, et cetera. It'll be fine. So that's the end of this episode. In between shows, you can find us at our website, objectionnetwork.com. You can send emails to the show to objectionnetwork@gmail.com. You can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/objectionnetwork for new videos 5 days a week. And finally, find us on social media at the places you can see below if you're watching us. That's at Team Objection. See you next time.